Mr. Joseph, and welcome to Awesome.
Morning, Lagos.
Can we dive straight in?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay, so our first story is coming from this day. Federal government incoming administration will inherit 77 trillion naira debt. Now, the federal government made this revelation that the incoming administration would inherit about 77 trillion naira debt by the time the current president's tenure ends in May this year. Now, the Director General of the Debt Management Office, Ms. Patience Oniha, had made the disclosure to journalists while breaking down the highlights of the 2023 Appropriation Act. Now, in another letter, the president also informed lawmakers that the government would take another 1 trillion naira loan from the CBN through the ways and means.
It's never getting reassuring at all. I mean, it's like patching a leaking boat. You're in a boat, it's leaking, you're patching it, you think that's a safe journey. It's not. And that's the sad story, actually, is that all these debts are piled up for the future. Yeah, I mean, this whole arrangement is supposed to stretch for 40 years. So it's the future of our generation, coming generation, that we are mortgaging today. So it's just figures. Yeah, people are reeling out figures. But what are the implications of all these debts, the loans, all that has been collected? It's that some people in the future will have to bear the consequence of all this recklessness. There is no guaranteeing that this whole amount is going to remain what it is, because the real story is that enough revenue is not being generated by this country to meet its needs. So we are borrowing money to do what? What are we spending this money? What's the content of the budget? I mean, they were doing budget breakdown. There are other stories there are underlying stories here. The padding of the budget, the inconsistencies in the budget, and all that. The increase by the National Assembly, from what the executive originally presented, funded a deficit. You have a government that is saying that they are not able to generate up to 10 trillion naira, but they are going to spend 21.83 trillion naira. So what we are saying is that we are going to borrow about 12 trillion to fund our budget. That's huge. That is huge. And there are no guarantees that the government revenue generation is improving. So as Nigerians, we ought to be concerned. And it's interesting that the National Assembly, knowing that we are funding this budget on borrowing, felt they should still increase the budget. I think what you should be doing when you are faced with a situation like this, say, look, how can we cut down on our expenditure such that we can manage the debt profile better? So the government comes out to tell us that the incoming administration is going to inherit a 77 trillion debt. And is that reassuring? Is this supposed to be some reassurance or what? I don't understand. What's the intention? Oh, okay. Somewhere in the story, the minister said, oh, well, we are just being transparent. It just shows how transparent. What's the reassurance to the average Nigerian? The sad part is that the average Nigerian does not know how this impacts him or her directly. Otherwise, we should be, in some countries, people should be standing in front of the National Assembly protesting this kind of thing, protesting when they are discussing these matters. But we are all quiet. We just behave as if it doesn't concern us. But it does. The economy is in comatose. I mean, it's comatose right now. It's just barely surviving. So these things are scary. And when you have government officials who are insensitive, then it's very alarming.
All right, let us know what your thoughts are. 0809 444 0981 on WhatsApp, and you can also tweet at Smooth981. Moving on to the next headline. This one comes from Punch. Nigerian political system unfavorable to youth, says Showore. Now, the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress says the current political system is not favorable to youth. And he goes on to talk about his early days of activism, which he says are part of what led to Nigeria's democracy and chased the military government out in the 90s. Now, on a television program, he said, why are youth not participating in politics? Going further to talk about the sacrifices that he made. Do you wholly agree with what Showore has stated?
In a way, it is true, because our democracy hasn't been what it should be. It's not, because our democracy is not founded on transparency, and those who created the system actually created it to benefit themselves. And most of them are those who tasted power and they don't want to leave it. So we're seeing recycling of individuals. We hear their names when we're little children. They're still around. They're still there. So we're not creating a succession approach. We're not using a succession approach in our politics, where you groom people who later on replace you, and you sit at the back and then you let these young people play. And the reason is simply that the whole system thrives on pandering to the individual's interest. So when you have leaders who are selfish, who do not think about the general good of their society and their country, that's the result you get. Because all they're interested in is, if they even care at all, is to replace themselves with their children. So they create a dynasty of the same political structure over and over again. So there is no genuine interest in cultivating young people. Yeah, in recent years, there have been all kinds of mouthing. The young, not too young to run arts and all those things. But in implementation, what does it really mean? Have the political parties internalized the philosophy to say, we're actually going to have a succession in our system, so that there is a process of mentoring young people, even for women too, including women. So it should be all inclusive. So we're not running a truly all inclusive democracy. You have a democracy that is just selfish for a clique. It's run by a clique, and they make sure that they determine who comes into play with them. If you're not one of them, then you're ostracized. He talked about military people coming back into power. Well, you can't really say any person cannot play in the politics. Right. They cannot play in politics, cannot be part of the politics. But it's where you institutionalize the process of getting people to recycle themselves. That's what is happening. In most of the parties, there is no internal democracy. It is usually endorsement. You pick somebody. Once the leadership of the party feels comfortable, or it's fulfilled what their conditions are, they give you the ticket to run. So until we have democracy, even in the party, we are going to continue to see this problem. So he's crying out today, partly because he's not benefiting. It's another Emilio syndrome. It's my turn. I should have it. It doesn't come like that, unfortunately. Yeah. So it's something young people have to fight for. So there's an act that. Sorry. Okay.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no. There's an act that is supposed to favor them. How much are they pushing that it actually is in practice? Yeah. So the ball is in the court of the young people. And I mean, recently, former President Obasanjo came up with a letter. A great portion of that letter was addressed to young people. Are they listening? Are they paying attention? The death profile of this country, are they paying attention? That's the question. It's the young people. Are they paying attention?
Now, some people have said the young people actually take part in politics, but they have the roles of rather enabling the people who some might say are the oppressors.
Yeah, exactly so, because they are the thugs. They are the ones who they use in snatching the ballot papers, the boxes, and all that. Their roles have been relegated to something inconsequential in the structure. Because if you are running a proper, clean democracy, those things shouldn't even happen. They are aberration. Yeah. So that's the question I'm asking again. Are young people paying attention to what is happening to their future, or they are just carried away by immediate pecuniary gains? Somebody give you something today, and they make you as what they call them, special assistant, maybe, or that's the highest you get. And that's all. How much does it pay you? What does it guarantee your future? So young people need to ask critical questions about themselves and about this, question their system. But it's not happening. It is sad.
We've got some messages coming through on WhatsApp. This one is from Shegun, and he says, our political system is favorable to youth, the youth that are usually the offspring of the current elders. That is the real meaning of not too young to run. And Ojo Lakbe says, good morning. Let me disagree with Showare. The youth are participating in politics, but the problem is that they stay too long. Okay, all right. And this one is from Yinka Bolu. Yinka Bolu says, I'm sorry, but I disagree with the analyst this morning. First, let's talk about these so-called loans. I believe we are not asking the right questions about the loans that are being taken. What is it being used for? That's the question, and that's what should cause a stir in the system. Okay, let's move on to Vanguard. Federal government orders security forces to end oil theft before May 2019. Now, Timothy Silva, who is the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, has charged security agencies to end crude oil theft before the President Muhammadu Buhari administration ends on the 29th of May. And he said this while addressing troops under the Operation Delta Safe during a visit to military formations in Port Harcourt just yesterday. And he reaffirmed that the president was committed to the total eradication of oil theft before leaving office on the 29th of May.
Yeah, we're supposed to clap hands and celebrate the government. Oh, yeah, they're doing something to stop oil theft. It's just disheartening that a country that can produce up to 3 million barrels of crude oil per day is barely able to produce 1 million barrels per day, because it allowed a systematic theft of crude to be established by criminal gangs. I worked in the sector and I know a little more about this. The oil producers for years were crying out for support from government. And this is the sad bit about it. Most Nigerians do not understand that the majority shareholder in most of the oil operations going on in Nigeria is the government. So for every 100 naira spent, the government actually brings about, some cases, 50 to 55 to 60% of that money. So the producers beg the government to support them to eradicate this whole thing. And people were playing politics and thinking that, oh, it's a matter of the IOCs, let them manage their issues and so on. And now it's become like an institution. There are situations where you have military houseboats barely 100 meters from where the illegal theft points are. And they are sustained by government funds, partly government funds, because being part of the joint venture, the government is providing the money. And then they are there, and then theft is going on. I mean, the recently discovered line that was running from Focazo Terminal had been in existence. I mean, we are told it's been in existence for 9 years. And what has happened is that the military tried to look for scapegoats, accuse the IOCs, accuse this person, accuse that person. And a question I answered somebody, I said, okay, let's take for granted that the IOCs were compromised and they were stealing food in Nigeria. And you are the Nigerian military who should safeguard national interest, assets, and you knew about it, what did you do? What did you do? So the minister is celebrating the achievement that has been made so far. It's on the decline. Something is happening. Oh, that before the May 29, this should be eradicated. We should have done this yesterday. I mean, 1 year ago. It shouldn't have happened at all. That's the point. It should not have happened. We should not have people being able to tap into our food oil production system and enrich themselves illegally. It's a syndicate. It's a huge syndicate that is spread deep. So unless it's the only way is you need to uproot that whole structure. Otherwise, it will resurface again. So after May 29, what happens?
Interesting.
We can go back to our old ways and continue to siphon national assets. Okay, so that's it. Sad.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. We're taking a quick break and we'll continue this conversation on the other side. As always, you can keep those messages coming, 0809 440 981. Okay, we'll be back on in just a little over a minute.
Nothing but good vibes. Worked hard from January to November. Now we're letting loose in December. Block parties and street shows. Now it gets me. Superstars and showstoppers won't miss me. Fashion shows and art shows. Beach parties and more.
Excuse me. Miriam. Miriam.
Exciting new things are happening. Because us fighting every day. It's like all of that positive energy. It's going to be an effort to remember. Vibes on vibes. This December is a vibe. Follow us on social media for details, invites, and vibes on vibes. You first back.
You first back.
This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1, and we're speaking with our analyst, Joseph Obari. We're talking about the news headlines, and just before we went on that break, we're speaking about the Minister of State for Petroleum asking or demanding the security forces to end oil theft before the end of May 2023. And next story comes from The Nation. G5 governors silent on choice presidential candidates. The 5 aggrieved governors of the People's Democratic Party, otherwise known as the Integrity Group, failed to name their preferred presidential candidate in Oyo State on Thursday. They were in Ibadan, the state capital, for the campaign flag off of Governor Seyi Makinde. Now, the campaign was held at the historic Mapo Hall and attracted a huge crowd of PDP members and supporters from across the state. Now, despite heightened expectations, the governors did not announce their preferred presidential candidates.
Well, I think these guys they are holding their cards to their chest. We are actually all intrigued. We want to see where this is playing to. And also they are being careful because, because they belong to a political party, yeah? So more or less, what they are doing is just one of the crises within the PDP, and we're all watching to see how that affects the fortune of the party, particularly in the presidential election. Because so far they've done this almost with impunity because the party has not been able to sanction them. And that's what gets really curious. Why is PDP unable to punish these 5 governors? Ordinarily, you say what they are doing is anti-party activity and all that. The constitution of the PDP, clearly they are in violation of the constitution of their party by what they are doing. But so far, nobody's been able to call a sanction on them, maybe because they are afraid of the consequence of that. The party is afraid of what the result will be, what could be the impact of punishing 5 governors, and then they simply have been holding back, maybe hoping to be able to get them back into line. But as Nyesom Wike, who is leading this band, is playing a very strong tune. He's more or less telling people. I mean, even in River State and even yesterday, he said they should vote for the party at the National Assembly election, the state election, governorship, and all that. But he didn't tell people to vote for their presidential candidate.
Right.
So his demands, their demands have always been that, they have to accept that the national chairman of the party should resign, should leave, and their condition has been that. So we are all interested in seeing how this plays out before the election on the 25th of February.
One of the G5 governors, the governor of Benue State, sort of in some way backed the endorsement of Mr. Obi by former President Obasanjo. In any way, is this sort of leading to what some people are expecting?
Well, it's difficult to say. We don't know what, the trend would be that, I just supported what Obasanjo said. I didn't say that I'm endorsing him. Yeah, but it makes a very bold statement. People interpreted that to mean that eventually these 5 will give their support to Obi. But in politics, one day is a long time. 24 hours is a long time. So anything can change. So it will be very foolhardy of any analyst to say, tomorrow these guys are going to support Obi just because Otom said what he said. So you will need to watch and see how this plays out. Maybe they're just screwing the tap on their party more and more to tighten the grip of whatever. To say, look, we mean business. You guys, if you're not taking us serious, we mean business, what we're saying. So if you're not ready to play with us, we will show that we really don't agree with you. So it could be a strategy. It could be just a genuine interest to want to push across their view. So we watch to see how it plays out.
All right, we've got some messages coming through. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981. Good morning, and this from Peter. The government came to destroy lives and mortgage the future of children. They borrowed to pay themselves wardrobe allowances and others. By now, in a sane country, Nigerian politicians are meant to be in prison. What happened to the stamp duty, the 89 trillion? They have the mind to tell Nigerians that they are borrowing more money. What did they do with that amount? Okay, the WhatsApp number is once again 0809 440 981. Another message from Idima Puza, and he says, oil theft wahala in Nigeria. No thief is caught if the thieves involved in this. If the thieves are involved in the search for stolen items, nothing would ever be recovered. All right, so let's move on to this story from Vanguard. Huge cash withdrawals now attract jail term. And this is according to Nigeria's intelligence agents, the Financial Intelligence Unit, warning public and private entities against massive cash withdrawals. Now, the director and chief executive officer, Mr. Modibo Haman Tukur, gave the advisory in a statement on Thursday in Abuja. And he spoke about the nation's security threats and financial liquidity, and said that this cashless policy was meant to strengthen the country's security and financial systems.
Zibby, you know what's disappointing for me is that all this noise you're hearing is not proactive. This noise you're hearing is coming from pressures outside Nigeria. The federal government has never been proactive. It's just like the fight against terrorism. They have never been proactive. It took Dubai arresting some Nigerians and jailing them for funding Boko Haram for us to get to know that there are over 200, 300, 400 Nigerians who are actually financiers of Boko Haram. And we here talked about the government having a list of them. Nobody has disclosed that list. We've not trial of those who have been implicated in that. It's never had. So this thing you're hearing about, this what you're reading about, it's triggered from pressures from international community who are interested in tracing and following financing of terrorism worldwide. And that's so nobody should take credit for this. It's not because they were brilliant and they felt, oh, they must curb financial cash flow in Nigeria. So all these things you're saying happening in the economy, government saying, oh, don't want much cash, is because of international pressure. But is it beneficial to us? Yes. We must be able to work our system such that it becomes seamless. People should embrace these policies that try to curb use of cash. I mean, in some African countries like Kenya, everywhere you go, it's just phone. Even the roadside woman transfers money, pay her whatever you're buying by transfer. You know, it is run by their postal agency, their post office, the post office of Kenya that is managing that process. So, and we have our telecom companies that are doing similar things, but the problem is that it is not seamless. There is still a lot of hitches. You walk into a shop, you want to pay for something, the POS is not working.
Right.
Yeah, you want to make a transfer to them, they say, oh, I can't accept transfer. Or you make the transfer. I had a recent experience. I went out to buy some flowers and then flower pots, flowers, and I paid for the item by transfer. So I transferred money for the pot successfully, and I saw some flowers I liked and I picked them. And it came to about 9,000 naira. And I also made another transfer. It gave me the impression that everything went well. And I left. The seller let me go because it gave me the flowers and I left. About 3 days later, I got a reversal notice from my bank. That very transaction had been reversed. And unfortunately, as it was my bank, they did not indicate which particular transaction it was. They just said reversal, and the amount was 9,000 naira. And I became curious. I was searching my mind. I was thinking about the previous day. I didn't make any transaction of 9,000. I had to now start tracing back. And then I eventually found that I made a transfer for flowers. Luckily, I had taken the number of the gardener because I wanted him to render more service to me.
Okay.
So I had to call him. I called him and said, oh, it does appear that, did you receive that 9,000 I made? He said, no, he didn't. And unfortunately, he didn't have my number. Well, I hadn't called him back. So I now said, okay, I've just got that money reversed. So send me your account details so that I can make that payment again. Now, imagine a situation where there was no, if I had an evil intention, I didn't want to pay the money.
Right.
I won't call the guy back. Or
you didn't have his details.
You didn't have his details or whatever. So you just, and you have traveled, or you're traveling and you had that kind of experience. You can't go back there and all that.
That is true.
So people, what that does is that it kills the incentive for people to want to do these kind of transactions. So this is that the government officials and our government offices have been complicit in the abuse of cash withdrawal. It is where corruption is, in fact, is a channel for corruption. And so if the government tries to get stricter with it, I don't see what is wrong with it.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have this morning on Freshly Pressed. Thank you so much, Joseph Obari, for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Zibby. It has been fun being with you. And
have a beautiful day. Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend. Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you. And that's it for Freshly Pressed. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on Smooth Breakfast.
First bang.
Thank you.